Hey everybody, Bob Stelton here. Look who I've got sitting here. If you don't know who this is, you should, and hopefully you will soon. Lead singer, guitar player of the Missionary Position and Walking Papers, and one of the best musicians out there, not just locally, but around. And I've been kind of stalking him, trying to get him in here. This is Jeff Angell. Good to have you in here, man.
Thanks for having me, man.
I'm glad. Hopefully I wasn't too much of a pest getting you in here, but
no.
You know what was funny is you and I met, was it probably 4 years ago, 3 years ago now? We met in a celebrity flag football game at CenturyLink Field that Mike McCready puts on. Yeah. And our mutual friend Duff McKagan was a part of it. He brought you that year, and I remember him telling me, he's like, Bob, you got to check out what I'm doing with this band, Walking Papers. And he played me some of the stuff, and I was like, I love this dude's voice. You know, I'm a musician. I played this city in every club in the world, and you have the voice that I always wanted, right? Like I could sing, I had great range, but you have a texture and a raspiness to your voice that is very unique. You don't sound like anybody. And more importantly than anything is you've got the gift of melody.
Well, thank you very much.
You know, as a songwriter is elusive. There are a lot of shredders out there, a lot of guitar players or guys that got this 4-octave range, but if you can't write, what's the point? And to me, that's what you have in all the bands I've heard, whether it's post-Stardom Depression or Walking Papers and Missionary Position, which is why we're talking to them, by the way. You guys are, I guess, reforming. Is that the right thing to say? Missionary Position playing at the Crocodile May 24th to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of your debut record.
Yeah, that was we reissued them up and got them all reprinted back up and putting them out, so we're excited about that. I don't know that we ever really broke up, but we kind of got distracted with the Walking Papers thing.
Okay.
And then unfortunately the drummer passed away, so we haven't played since he passed away, and I was working on about 2 years now.
Okay.
So it kind of took us a minute to kind of feel like it was time to let the songs live on, I suppose.
Well, now, was there a groundswell? Were there people saying, because I know that's how I got back in contact with you, is I'm like, Jeff, I'm looking for these releases. I couldn't find them anywhere. You had 2 releases as the Missionary Position, and I couldn't find them anywhere. I was at Easy Street, and I was at all these used record places. Nobody had it. I remember emailing you, saying, I'm trying to find this. I'm getting the feeling I wasn't alone.
No, I think it was you. We're basically doing the show for you, and by the ticket sales, I think it's you and my girlfriend are coming.
No. I'm expecting a full house that night, because anybody I've played this stuff for is just like, wait, who are these guys? This is fantastic. So,
thank you.
To me, you're one of those bands that it's just a matter of exposure. It's not a matter of talent or songwriting. It's a matter of just getting in front of people. And I'm wondering, as you guys were going 10 years ago, how much of a challenge was that?
Well, we tried to start off by naming our band the Missionary Position, which was probably not the best start to any musical career. But I actually think that we did we did something different with that band. What we wanted to do is we wanted to try something like, if you play in the scene, you get these people and their ideas. Like a lot of the main band they care about is the band they're in.
Right.
So we kind of went a whole another route, and we started touring a circuit, and we got bigger and bigger, but we would play places where we would play all night for like 3 hours and stuff like that, do more of a bar band kind of thing.
So were you doing covers at the time too?
We did some covers, but we had enough stuff to really and we would play some of the post-Stardom material too. So we had enough to fill the night, and we'd be like, if they wanted covers, we'd be like, this is the B-side, Howlin' Wolf's Hit Spoonful. A lot of people don't know this one, and then we would just play our own stuff. But what was really cool about it is that you were playing for real people that just wanted to hear good music, and a lot of them were kind of caught off guard, and we're like, wait, this band's not your average bar band.
Right.
But we were kind of like, when we were playing clubs and stuff, you'd play like a 30, 45-minute set, and it was just like, we were like, loading all this equipment in here to play for 30 minutes. This is, we're not even breaking a sweat yet. And
right.
So we got to really get through a lot more material. So it wasn't, but we had some good things happen. So they used one of our songs for the Independent Film Channel, was like their theme song.
Was that Let's Start a Fire?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they had and of course that's how I met Barrett and Duff and got on the Walking Papers thing. But the funny, with the Walking Papers, of course, we got to tour with Aerosmith and Alice in Chains, Jane's Addiction, and all these. We had a really good, still having a good run. We're going out with Stone Temple Pilots here in June. So with that, the other band kind of got put on hold, but a lot of people's favorite records are actually still the Missionary Position records.
They're fantastic
So
records.
I have so we were kind of like, let's go out and, so now we have all these new fans from the Walking Papers that weren't familiar with it, and so we're trying to kind of like maybe expose them to that stuff. But to me, it's all the same. You know, they're just my songs or my songs are songs that I've written with different people just under different names, but that's really just
right.
You know, so it gets hard these days to, like, you know, keep it together and keep your band together and all the people, you know.
Bands are terminal.
Yeah.
they just are, right?
Yeah, it is true.
But you guys, you've got some carryover in terms of members from Missionary Position to Walking Papers, you and your keyboard player.
Yeah.
Was there any carryover from post-Stardom Depression to Missionary Position?
No, that was when the Missionary Position kind of started, I was just going to make a record on my own.
Okay.
And because, well, one of the guys in post-Stardom Depression was in jail for a long time, so and that's kind of how that band rolled.
Right.
And so when I got in the Missionary Position, I'd known Ben, so I went to his house. He was going to kind of produce the record, but then he just, you know, played such a big part on it that it became kind of part of the thing. And ever since then, we've just had he's kind of my work wife, I guess, you know, so we have a really finish each other's sentences, which I could use him a couple times in this interview. Finish each other's sentences, and, like, you know, he helps takes my songs to a higher level, and sometimes he comes in with ideas of his own that I'm, you know, that I can build on them and kind of complete them for him. So it's a pretty good situation. So I'm happy to do with anything I can do with him.
Was it hard? I mean, obviously it's not hard if Duff McKagan says, "Hey man, let's put something together." You're like, yes, but.
Yeah.
Just looking at the quality of the songs on those two records, the two Consequences and what is it, Diamonds in a Dead Sky. I mean, these are I'm not trying to blow smoke. These are really, really good, unique songs to me. And I'm wondering how, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that hears that, so I'm wondering how hard was it to say, all right, this goes on the back burner, and now I'm going to follow this Walking Papers trail for a while and see where that takes me. Was it hard to push that back at all?
Well, it's kind of funny is that Duff actually joined Walking Papers after it was already rolling.
Oh, okay.
So he didn't really chase me down to start something. We had entertained starting a couple things through the years because we're friends, but then we asked him to come in and play on a couple songs, and he just kind of came. He was like, we were like, come down here and have some fun, and he jumped on a couple songs, and then he was like, I really like what you're doing. If you guys want me to come and tour with you and take it further, you know, I'd like to join. And then once he joined, he became more part of the creative process. But with the Consequences, while Ben, like, you know, like I'm more of an instigator and Ben's more of a finisher. We're very alpha omega in the way we roll. I kind of look at the forest and he kind of stares at the bark. You know what I mean? So we kind of, when we were finishing Consequences, I just had other songs, and then Barrett had some studio time. So I really just looked at it as like the Walking Papers was really just screwing around. But dude, so when we got those guys in there, it just kind of things started happening more for that, and more because it got people's attention. So it's like, I don't know that I think that the Walking Papers is a better band. It's a little bit different in some ways, but I think it's still quality stuff.
Your biggest transition seemed to take place from post-Stardom to Missionary Position, right? You had horns in there. Post-Stardom seemed more of a rock band. Like, it was just kind of a hard rock, still really good stuff, but to me there's a much bigger gap between those two versus Walking Papers and Missionary Position. Was there something that just changed your songwriting as a chief songwriter? Was it something you're just like, I'm listening to different things, I'm just growing as a songwriter?
I think when you play with people, you kind of got to go look at what are the strengths of the people that you're playing with. You know, because musicians are sometimes like, this guy's so much better than that guy or this guy. And to me, I don't really even care. Technical ability is good if it increases your palette, but like some guys hardly know how to play their instrument, but they find a way to make it a voice for them.
Right.
And those guys are sometimes more special than a guy that can play any lick on the planet, but doesn't really have a personality. So the guys in post-Stardom, due to the personalities of who they were, I could look at the way that they played and then kind of like, oh, let's write songs for these guys. Where in the Missionary Position was kind of the first thing where I was like, I can just write whatever I want, and then people can adapt to that, you know. And then when the saxophone guy I played with him and jammed with him a few times, and I was like, this guy's really talented, let's have him come in and play on that. And Ben could play piano, so we got another color in there that post-Stardom just didn't have a piano player. So, but also I think with post-Stardom was such a rock band that I was kind of had some other kind of ideas that I didn't get to really explore in that band, because some of those guys are kind of heavy-handed, and they're like, you don't want to sing about your feelings, or are we going to rock? You know?
And you guys signed a deal with post-Stardom, right?
Yeah,
was it Interscope?
Yeah, we actually went through a couple different labels. We were on an independent label on Lakeshore Records, which did more music soundtracks, and then we went to Interscope, which they tied us up in a deal, but we never got to make a record with them, and we actually had to break out the lawyers to get out of that deal. And then we went with the Control Group, which is actually now, it was Nabil who owns Sonic Boom Records and stuff like that, and actually the guy down, Dana Sims, who owns the El Corazon down there, he actually kind of contributed, and they kind of had like a little independent label, and he used to work at Sub Pop. And then Nabil Ayers, who owns Sonic Boom, he actually went on to work for 4AD.
Okay.
So they put us out on their label, like an independent label, and they did a few local bands and stuff like that. And but they also did like stuff for like the Killers and Kings of Leon and stuff like that. And then so we put those records out there. But like I said, that band was just the one guy was in jail when the second record came out. You know, we were going on tour and getting kicked out of Canada, and so it was like we were very. When I think about it now, I kind of really loved our energy, but I think we kind of got in our own way.
Yeah.
You know, we caused a lot of problems and alienated a lot of people because we were definitely living larger than life at that time. But it was a lot of fun, and I'm grateful for the experience, you know.
Now, how much has your view of the music industry changed? I mean, you signed a deal which, listen, when I was playing, that was the dream, right? To sign a deal and be able to say, I'm on Geffen Records, I'm on Interscope, and you just think all your dreams come true at that point. And obviously you had a different experience, but the music industry these days is so different. I mean, it almost seems like record companies are obsolete. Everybody's doing everything on their own. They tour on their own. They've got distribution through different avenues. It just feels like the record company has been minimized in a way that was never even thought of back when I was playing, and probably when you started. How much different is your mindset just in terms of approaching your music career when it comes to signing a deal, not signing a deal, things like that?
Well, I'm a masochist, I guess, because the music business it's painful. Yeah. But I think at a time, you know, it's a pendulum swinging, you know, but people really need to see the dialectical nature of these things. You know, they look at the record label like it's a big evil thing, but it's also, there was a time when these record labels really cultivated bands and gave them a platform to, you know, exercise their freedoms and be creative.
And actually let them grow.
Yeah, and then it became a time where the record company became more powerful than the musicians, you know, and the artists. But they had these big checkbooks. But then now the struggle is, so then a lot of people I don't think felt bad about trading music and stuff like that because the bands weren't really getting the money anyways.
Right.
But where the bands were getting the money was in marketing and radio airplay. There was radio campaigns, there was publicists, and all these people, and the people at the labels, you know, were key to establishing these artists. So it's like there's no huge band in all of history that didn't have an amazing manager or something behind them. And so there's, you know, people like the idea that like, I did this all by myself. I really need to thank me. For,
DIY.
First of all, I'd like to start with thanking me because I'm amazing. And everything I've done, all the genius decisions I made, and any setbacks I had was listening to other people, you know. But really, these labels did a lot for bands. And then now, since people aren't buying records and the internet has come through, although the internet has been the best thing that ever happened to music listeners, it's also the worst thing that ever happened to music, you know, because now there's no marketing budget to help these bands. So, you know, if you want to be in a band and you want to, you know, make your own album and you want to push your band and all this stuff, it's an open platform, but it's such a vacuum. It's really hard to get anyone's attention. So the labels used to, put money into these bands. They pay for videos, they pay for airtime, and there's no one doing that anymore. So what you might end up with here is a bunch of kids that their dad invented the color yellow. Yeah. And so he takes his money to turn his daughter or his son into a superstar and can spend all the money to, you know, promote their band. And it's happening all. We can hire the best songwriters and the best hairstylists and the best video director. So it's almost worse for music than having labels out there in some ways, you know. So so there's all that, and there's like, who cares? Let's just have some fun, you know. So it's nice.
Is that your approach now? Because again, I harken back to when I was playing, and that was the goal. I got to make it. I want to be on a label. I want to tour. And I want this to be my life. Now, fast forward for you. You've tasted that. You've toured, but you're also a guy. You've got your own business. You're married. Is the dream still I want to make my living being a songwriter and being a touring musician.
Actually, the funny thing is, I'm glad that's over.
Really?
But I don't have to think about that because I don't put the weight on my art of it having to sustain itself. So it sustains itself, and it doesn't really cost me money, and it makes all these opportunities happen, kind of pays for itself. But I think a lot of artists, if you want to be a musician and you're growing up, it's like you should probably learn how. There's guys that are on tour that are running web designing companies. They're doing graphic arts. There's guys that are on tour that are. I've toured with a drummer one time that wrote a book on leasing while he was on tour, and he was managing his business on the phone, and that's kind of what you got to do if you're expecting music to pay the way. Right. You already failed. So you got if that happens, and you will get these windfalls. I just yesterday found out I got a decent little check coming from a song I wrote and some different things. They'll surprise you, and those are great. But you got to, if you're counting on it, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. You got to create a business model that's going to work. Anyways, right. You would do it even if you didn't have the bills. Right. And if you would do that, then you're set off to do the right thing, and you won't compromise your art. And if you don't compromise your art, you're going to make better art, and then hopefully you have a better chance of making it.
When you did these tours, you were talking about with Walking Papers, where you're playing with Aerosmith and playing with these big established bands, and you got Stone Temple Pilots coming up. Yeah. I mean, you're getting a taste of it, what we all dreamed of as young musicians. Did it change anything in that aspect? Like, hey, I'm playing arenas now, and this is what it's like, and I want to do this more? Or were you just still of the mindset like, hey, this is great for now, and I'm going to go home and do my regular job, and hopefully I can do this again? Yeah. Did it change you at all, just experiencing it on that level?
I think in a good way. I think I'm pretty, had that happen to me at 26 years old, I think, or 23 years old. And I did do some big shows back then, here and there. But I think you would... it could really hurt a person mentally of what their expectations are in life. Right. But the interesting thing, and it's kind of fun, I've played to 80,000 people, and I've played to just a bartender.
Right. I did more of that, by the way.
I've actually sat there having a drink with the bartender one time, and then some customers walked in, and he's like, get up there and do your job. So,
you're thanking them for coming in one by one.
They're like, any Van Halen? I was like, what's the tip? What is the tip going to be if I play Van Halen? And then we played to like 80,000 people at Hellfest, on the main stage, But so we did this tour with, so you play some of these big stages, and at first, you definitely have a moment of like, here I am, here we are.
I made it.
We're on a tour bus. We made it. If you're a musician, to me, I never actually thought about like the swimming pool or the sports car. I was just like, I knew what I wanted to do, and you wanted to be like the people that you were your heroes when you were a kid.
Right.
And then you get up and then you play, and then later on you find out that it's like, oh, these guys are rich too. Bonus.
Yeah.
But I never was like, I think if you go into music because you want to get rich, you're kind of an idiot. It's like there's better ways to make money that are more
certain ways.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. So you get up there and you get to this big, huge crowd, and you have to learn how to wrangle it, because at first it sounds different than a club. The monitors, if you step 5 feet this way, you can't hear yourself anymore. So you're like, oh my God, I brought these amps, and that's like bringing a knife to a gunfight because they can't handle it. So then you need bigger equipment, you need different support. You realize how, your cool little snarl on stage doesn't affect the back row.
Yeah. So customer number 50,000 back there.
Yeah. You start going, man, how do we get these guys going? You start figuring out we need a fist pumper to get these guys knowing that we see them back there, and then you'll start to watch like big bands. You realize why they kind of go about things the way they do to get the audience's attention.
Right.
And then you get a hold of that. It takes you a little while. If you're smart, you don't die. Then about 10 shows in, you kind of realize you kind of know how to do it, and then you realize it's not as cool as playing to 400
really
sweaty fans in a club with no security where you can see their faces. It's not as exciting.
You can't walk out into that crowd the way you do at the Crocodile.
You can. I've done it. But you get up there when the lights turn on in an arena with Aerosmith. The lights turn on, and you can't see the crowd.
Right.
It's completely black. So it's like you're playing to nobody.
Right.
So it's like you're back in your practice room. So then you're like, how do I create that energy without knowing there's an audience there? It's like you almost forget there's an audience watching you until the song ends, and then the lights turn on, and you see them there, right? And then they're way far away because you got these security, you got your monitors. It's set up way in front of you, and it's like, so that's blocking that. Then the stage is super high, so if there's people in the front, they can only see you over the monitors. And there's security guards, and maybe there's a track for the camera for the Jumbotron, so they're 30 feet away from you. So when those lights go out, you can't see them.
Oh.
So when you're playing this huge show, it's like...
It's not as huge as you thought it would be.
Yeah, it doesn't have and the sound isn't ricocheting off the walls. Your drummer's all the way over there, and it's a big empty room, so it doesn't have the ambience that it does.
Gotcha.
So when you play outside show, big huge show, then at least you can see the crowd, which is pretty intense.
Yeah.
But like some of those arena shows, it's like you feel a little disconnected from the audience. So that's a long way to get there, but I thought people might enjoy what that's like.
Right.
And then you realize, and this is for every young band or everyone that's out there, it's actually all about the moment. So when you're playing to 100 people in a club, you might go after the show, you're thinking, man, if we could just make it to the bigger club, it's pretty freaking great right there.
Yeah.
The energy right there. And then you want to, how about when there's nobody there? You go to your practice, it's just you and your band. If you can drum up some energy there with no audience and just keep that fire burning, you get bigger and
That's
bigger.
hard to do.
And it's going to be great. You got to not that fire should be coming from within you. It shouldn't be like an outside source. So eventually you get to that big stage and you're like, we're going to play this one is no different than if we're playing the stage next to the cotton candy in the women's bathroom at Bye to Seattle. You know what I mean? That's still, you got to still have that same kind of passion for what you're doing. And then you realize that, you know, all these things are true. It's not about the destination. It's about the journey. It's not about tomorrow. It's about that moment right there. And you got to be present. You know,
how much are you putting into missionary position now? I mean, you got this show again, the 24th at the Crocodile. Are you looking at it as we'll do a couple shows, we'll play it by ear, or is there a concerted effort to get that going again and then address Walking Papers later? What's the balance?
We're actually working on a Walking Papers record right now, and then we're playing these missionary position songs. And I think that what's harmed me the most in my music career is being pulled in all these different directions. It's hard, you know, there's probably fans out there that like post-Stardom Depression are like, what happened to that guy?
Right.
You know? And I think that there's some people that aren't connecting the dots. And, you know, Walking Papers definitely got the most reach. So
Certainly.
That tends to be, you know, the smart place at this point to put my attention into that.
Okay.
But there is other missionary position stuff that hasn't come out. And now...
There'll be more shows, or is it just this one
we might
for
do
now?
some more stuff, but there's more songs that we've recorded before we never put out. And there's also, but now it's kind of like when we're doing the Walking Papers shows, now we're playing some missionary position songs.
Right.
The missionary position always played some post-Stardom songs, so it's like I kind of feel, you know, and Duff's busy with the Guns N' Roses thing and this and that. It's like and it's me and Ben anyways, we can kind of just play whatever we want. So the Walking Papers will play to more people, so we're kind of just know all the songs, and that, you know, might as well just, that's the name, that's where you'll find us. But you know, I think we kind of just want the freedom to play whatever songs we want and mix them all together.
So you'll, at this show coming up, you'll hit both records, right? Because I know it's celebrating the debut release, but you'll hit stuff off the Consequences
we'll play
record.
both records, and then but in the Walking Paper shows, we're already playing a few missionary position songs and stuff too. So
will there be Walking Paper songs played at the missionary position show?
No, I think that's just exclusive.
Okay.
And in the Walking Papers too, I haven't been playing guitar as much in that, and so this one I'm kind of like just shredding on the guitar, just me. And so I think
because you were the only guitar player, right? You didn't have another guitar player.
Yeah,
in missionary
we didn't even
position.
have a bass player. Like Ben played all the keys on his key bass.
Okay.
So it has some unique things that you can do. Other things you can't do, real easy things.
Right.
But then some things you can do that a real bass can't do. So it's pretty.
He's going Ray Manzarek there.
Yeah.
So that's cool. You know what's funny is I think I may have seen the first show with your current guitar player.
Yeah.
Because I remember you guys played a song where he started over like 3 times.
And
And you're like, and you said you'd thrown out a line like, man, I'm so tired of my own licks. This is so and so, and there was a song that you started over like 3 times. Might have been his first show at the Crocodile, and then I fast forward. I've seen you guys multiple times, but man, that is a monster musician. Your drummer is a beast.
Yeah.
By the way, the first time I've seen a band with a left-handed drummer and a left-handed guitar player.
Yeah.
Which I thought was unique. But I mean,
I think that
monster musicians.
we should get
in that
some
band.
kind of like there's got to be some merch or something, like a coffee cup or something.
Signifying that?
Yeah, the Southpaws. You know, we should
Yeah.
have some Southpaws from everywhere should be coming out to support these guys, you know.
Yeah. So as far as, so you're working on something with Walking Papers right now? Is there an end date? Is there like, hey, we want something out by the end of the summer?
We
want
would
it
like
out
to.
this
I'd like to
year?
get it finished by the end of this year.
Okay.
I mean, we have enough songs right now, but we're kind of always reaching a little bit for. You know, you start writing songs. By the time you get to the 10th one, you're sick of the first one.
Right.
So you can't. But you can get caught in that trap that you never finish anything. You know. So you got to finish them and move on. You know, to where you're going. But I feel like we got a real healthy batch of songs that I think people will be excited. Of course, we did the Static Land thing in between there too. So you got Post-Stardom Depression, the Missionary Position, Static Land,
Which was your
and Walking
solo
Papers.
project.
Yeah, but we had band in there too. So
Right.
like, is there really anything that's a solo project? You know?
Well, it's Jeff Angell's Static Land, so I guess
well,
that signifies that.
That was the label's genius idea. You know.
Oh, really?
I was like, yeah, I'm sure we can. If we put my name on it, we could they'll be beating the doors down.
We're going to move some units with this one. That'd be great.
Yeah.
So in terms of your songwriting, I mean, do you feel like I haven't written my greatest song yet? Like I'm still peaking, or
Yeah.
I mean, because I could sit there as a fan and point to Red and White's one of the best songs I've ever heard, or I could point to something off the Consequences record and say White Knuckle is phenomenal. You know what I mean? It's my opinion, but as the guy who's behind it and writing the songs, are you still saying, man, I haven't written my masterpiece
I
yet?
credit where credit's due. Red and White kind of came from Ben's keyboard thing.
Really?
Yeah, he had the chorus, and then I helped him put the verse to it, and then wrote the lyrics, and then we built the bridge together. And that's kind of like a pure. I couldn't have wrote that song on my own because I know the way that he writes.
Right.
So if you would, you know, I might have found a way to write a song that was 80% of that is, but he's the type of guy that takes it a little further. But he actually was the instigator of that song.
Okay.
So, you know, so he deserves credit. It's
a great song.
Yeah, he did. Well, I heard him play in the piano part in the chorus. Like he would play it at sound check. And I was like, we got to do something with that thing. You got that thing. And then so he came over to my house and we did full on like song, like you would imagine. Most songs we don't write this way, but we actually sat down and go, okay, you have that thing, play it. And I go to my lyric book and we just sat there, and like 6 hours later, we had the song. Then we took it to practice, and we showed the guys, and they learned to play it. And then we didn't have a bridge. We were like, we need a bridge. And so then we went to start to write the bridge, and those guys were like, I'm not sitting here. I got things to do. So they went out in the hall and talked.
I got things to do.
And I think they might even left. And then me and Ben finished the bridge, probably another 3 hours to find the right bridge and the lyrics that go to it. And it was really like a full on, like, let's roll up our sleeves and get to work.
Yeah.
But I think if you think you wrote your best song, then you should probably quit.
Fair enough.
So
yeah.
I think that there's some certain things. I think there's certain songs surprise you later on that you're like, that's better than I thought it was. Like a lot of times I'll always I feel like after I listen to my songs later, I kind of feel like the second half of the record's maybe better. But sometime at that point when I was writing it, I thought that those songs should be buried. And then later on, you can hear your songs differently. I listened to the Diamonds in a Dead Sky that we're celebrating the thing on the 24th, and I hadn't heard it in years. And when I listened to it, I really had a whole new appreciation for the record.
Yeah, the other thing to me that was interesting in listening to all your stuff, especially Missionary Position on, is I don't really hear an influence. Like certain bands you can listen to and go, yeah, you can tell they were a fan of Pearl Jam, or yeah, they were a fan of whatever. Mm-hmm. I don't really hear that in you. Who'd you listen to? Who would you cite as your influence, which I'm sure you get asked 8 million times, but it's not as obvious with your stuff, which I think is what makes it so compelling and unique. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, I have a lot of influences, and I had different influences at different times. So like when you're a kid, when I was a kid, like the first records I bought were The Police. Okay. And I really loved the drums on that, and I went and saw The Police was my first concert, which I think the energy of The Police is there's some of it in there, of the drums or something, and certain kind of some of the jazz elements of what they have. But then I heard Black Sabbath, and that was I was like, that's the music for my 12-year-old rage, And then as a guitar player, it's just great, simple riffs. And so then that was there. But then as you started to grow, and back then I didn't even want to be a singer, but then so I was just wanted to be a guitar player. But then as I started, getting exposed to more music and stuff like that, I think I listened to all sorts of stuff, but then I got really into I was into Iggy Pop and David Bowie. I saw the whole Seattle thing going here, and Alice in Chains was a big deal to me when I was as a teenager growing up. They were one of my favorite bands.
Right.
And all this stuff kind of has this blues element to it that I think, and then I trace that back to the stuff that I'd play when my mom was a kid. She would play Elvis and the Eagles and stuff like that. So I would get this country and this blues thing that was always in there. But I think as a kid, I kind of rebelled against that, and later on, I embraced it. But I think that if I have a sound of my own, I think it's the own. The thing is I think the best quality a singer can have is if you believe what they're saying. Right. So I kind of just try to feel like if I'm writing this, I can't sing songs if I don't feel like the words are worth singing.
Right.
But I got to tell you, the truth is I don't really feel, it sounds hokey, but I don't feel like I'm writing songs. I feel like you're casting the net, you just leave the ear open, and their songs are there, and these ideas will pop in your head. And and when they pop in your head, the trick is just that's the magic. And you got to capture that idea, and then once you have that spark, you got to shelter that spark and never forget that initial spark, and then you build off of that to what you do. But I feel like if you think that once you start trying to think that you're writing a song, it doesn't really. It's almost the songs screw you, man. What do you think? You don't think I got ideas of my own, So you're kind of more, it's like you're sheltering these ideas that kind of drop out of heaven if you're open to them.
So you're not consciously thinking, I got to write a hook.
No.
I got to write a hook.
I'm more like this thing, we're writing a song now, and it has one of the lyrics in there will be, they held my feet to the fire, or we're not going to hold your feet to the fire. Right? Yeah. And I'll be like, that's a song, that's a hook. So did I write that? I didn't write it. It's a saying that people are familiar with.
Right.
But so, did Paul McCartney invent the word yesterday? Right. No, he put his flag in yesterday. And if anybody said, have you ever heard the song Yesterday?
Yeah.
He's kind of got, there's probably a few, but he's kind of got his
he staked
flags.
His claim.
Yeah. He wrote the one that, that thing. So it's sometimes you're kind of looking for people. So I was talking to this girl one time, and she's like, have you seen so-and-so? And I was like, I asked her, have you seen this person? And she's like, saw her on the street the other day, but she rolled her eyes and looked away. And I'm like,
that's a great lyric.
They're like, so you have your mind that's open to these things that'll just drop. They're there if you live your life with this filter of, anything is a possible song, which is a pretty cool way to live your life, because you're living your life looking for the poetry in life.
Right. It's just falling to you at that point. You're not forcing it.
No.
Right. So it just in terms of your song, again, back when I was playing, my guitar player would come up with a riff, and I would say, all right, let me listen to that over and over, and then I would come up with a melody to it.
Did you come up with it, or did it you just heard it?
I think I forced it. I didn't have again, you've got the gift of melody. To me, writing a hook is the hardest thing to do. I don't care how adept you are at playing, or what a monster you are on the drums, or how busy you are, you got this range. If you can write, that's the gift, because that's much more rare than the shredder. And that was something that didn't come naturally to me. I always forced it. Whereas I hear you, and I'm just like, God, this melody just makes perfect sense, and it just flows. And so I'd always try to write. I'd hear the guitar part, and I'd try to write to it. But it sounds like you just. Do you start out with a melody? Do you ever hear a melody and say,
let me find a guitar? Do you play guitar?
A little.
Yeah. I think when you're playing guitar and you're kind of jamming to stuff, it might have helped. Being a guitar player might have helped me noodle. Noodle. And so the ideas kind of noodle in your head. But it's I don't. And I've definitely tried to write songs that way, but I didn't have any success.
Right.
I wasn't having success with them. So then later on, when I just started to kind of listen for them, and then kind of follow that first instinct if you hear something there. And then sometimes I'll take those to someone like Ben, or if I was writing with one of the other guys, and I would go, they might hear something different. And sometimes it's really hard for me to break out from that first idea that I have. It's almost hard to abandon it. But sometimes they're right, and then they'll push it, and then it'll grow into even something hopefully even better. Or maybe I don't hear the bridge, and I hear all these other parts, and I'll deliver almost a full song with the lyrics, and then someone's like, yeah, but I just don't feel satisfied. What if we went here? And then you have to know there's a certain point to go, okay, it's cool. I did what I can do with that. It's time.
Right.
It can't grow unless we, give it, hand it over. You know what I mean? Which, and the sports thing is funny about that is like, you think about these, sometimes you got to pass the baton, or
you got to rely on your teammates.
You got to do the pitch back.
You can't always win the game yourself.
No, yeah, and you're going to, maybe pick up some more yards with that. They're not all, sometimes you need a little help on those kind of things, and I think it gets better. But, and I think sometimes when I think about all these things, it's like a lot of it is people psych themselves out of being able to do it, and it's hard, but it's
probably what I did.
But yeah, well, you get the inspiration for the thing, and it's nothing if you don't take it and put the work behind it.
Yeah.
And
now, before I let you get out of here, in terms of what you listen to, we were talking about you listening to Black Sabbath and Elvis and all these things. For me, it's hard. It makes me feel like an old man when I listen to what's popular today, and I'm going, God, there's just nothing to this. There's no substance. Half of it's computerized. People don't even play instruments half the time, or somebody's writing all their songs for them. But I feel like you're starting to see a resurgence of rock bands now, whether you like Greta Van Fleet or not, or whether you like the Struts, you don't, Rival Sons. It feels like there's kind of a groundswell of rock bands coming back, which is, I think, would be great for Missionary Position or Walking Papers. Do you sense that at all? Are you that in touch with what's happening out there right now, or do you kind of stay out of it? What are you just hearing today that, if anything, that inspires you?
Yeah, I listen to a lot of stuff. I just went and saw Ice Age play to the Vera Project to about 80 people.
Okay.
And they're from Glasgow.
Okay.
So I thought that they were great and had a new spin on it. And I saw, I like this band Algiers. That's really cool. They're kind of like doing they're probably on their second record. It's almost like the singers, like they're putting gospel and like goth rock together.
Okay.
It's kind of got a cool thing. I like the Rival Sons. I've liked them for a while. They've been kind of hitting it for a long time. I think that they're
finally getting some mainstream success off
and
this
they've
last
definitely
record.
pounded it out, on the road. They put a lot of years in. They've consistently made records for a while. But what's funny is that this is what you see on the West Coast and the East Coast. And I like some hip hop and stuff. One of my daughters plays a lot of hip hop for me and stuff. And there's certain aspects. I liked a lot of electronic music, like with Nine Inch Nails and Ministry.
Right.
And some of those bands. So I'm open to electronic music in a lot of ways, like if someone's doing something interesting with it.
Right.
And some of the hip hop guys are doing some really cool stuff with the trap stuff. Some of the rapping seems to be moving backwards. Like it seems like the peak of free, like Eminem was probably the peak of like the virtuosity and the creative, poetic nature of
hard to be
hip-hop.
unique in that genre to me, and
Well,
that's
and
somebody who
like,
stood out.
Like Eminem is. I think they say he's used 7,000 unique words.
Okay.
In his vocabulary, in his songs, and I think Bob Dylan is second with like 4,000. So it's like so for an 8th grade dropout, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
What he's doing lyrically, but then musically, I feel like they got the mumble rap and stuff going now, where I think the beats are awesome, but the lyrics are kind of boring.
Yeah.
But then in what they're finding, if you're on the East Coast or West Coast, you would think that hip hop or pop ruled the world.
Right.
But that's because the East Coast and the West Coast kind of control media.
Yeah, they're sort of dictating what...
They have a bigger influence on the media. But then if you actually follow what people are actually listening to, they actually say that indie rock is probably 40% of what people are listening to. The thing is indie rock just doesn't have this huge... They don't have Kendrick Lamar or Drake. They have 200 bands that are big in 20 cities.
Yeah.
That are being listened to in that way. So in that way, it's really exciting because maybe these, music can be more diverse, maybe more regionally successful. So you have bands and then you can maybe see these bands without paying $300 for a ticket. You can go see them at a 600-seater for $20 and have a real experience. Versus, you're like, why is this beer? You can buy a beer at a stadium show you could go see a local band 10 feet away from you for the price of the beer at the other show. So I think that's really inspiring to see that all these indie bands and stuff are kind of have this cool thing going on under the surface. It just doesn't have the culture impact of one of those bands. But those bands, some people are making millions of dollars and they're bringing in millions of dollars of revenue and losing money because it costs millions of dollars to make them seem like a star.
Yep.
Some other band might be bringing in a couple $100,000, but they're eating light and traveling small, and they might be buying houses.
Yeah.
So I think that's a cue for all culture. You know what I mean? Just let's think about small and efficient versus big and
overblown and bloated, and Well, it's happening the 24th at the Crocodile, the Missionary Position, celebrating the release of their debut record, a phenomenal record. Both are they going to be on sale there, by the way?
Yeah,
for people like me that couldn't find them
all
anywhere?
reprinted up.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I can't wait for the show. Get out there. You will not be disappointed. Jeff Angell, awesome to speak with you, man. Thanks so much for coming in.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.